So, when you think of the big names in English literature, who pops into your head? Shakespeare? Milton? Well, today we're going back, way back, to the guy who basically laid the foundation they all built on. We're talking about Geoffrey Chaucer, the original architect of the English language. And to really get a handle on just how important this guy was, let me ask you a question. Who was the very first poet to be given the incredible honor of being buried in what we now call Westminster Abbey's Poets' Corner? The answer? Well, it might surprise you because poet was just one of his many, many job titles. Yep, the answer is Geoffrey Chaucer. But here's the thing. Long before he was a literary legend, he was a man of action, a soldier, a diplomat, and a seriously high-ranking government official. And believe it or not, those real-world jobs are the secret ingredient to his genius. Right, so if we want to understand the architect, we've got to get to know the man first. Let's dig into the incredible life he led, because it's those experiences that gave him such a unique window into his world. First off, Chaucer wasn't some starving artist scribbling away in an attic. He was born into a pretty well-off London family, got a fantastic education, and could speak multiple languages, which was basically a superpower in the 14th century. But, and this is the key part, he didn't just lock himself away in an ivory tower. He got out there, serving in a noble house, and even fighting in the 100 Years' War. He saw everything from the highest courts to the mud of the battlefield. I mean, just take a look at his resume. He was a page, a soldier, he even got captured in battle, and, get this, the king himself paid the ransom to get him back. Later, he's the controller of customs, basically managing the finances for the entire port of London. Then he's a justice of the peace, and he's overseeing the king's construction projects. And somehow, he's doing all of this while writing some of the most important works in English history. It's just incredible. And maybe the most impressive thing of all was his political savvy. You know, the 14th century was a pretty treacherous time in English politics, but Chaucer didn't just survive, he absolutely thrived. He managed to serve 3 different kings in a row: Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV. That kind of access gave him a front row seat to how power, money, and society really worked. Okay, so how on earth does a guy with a resume like that become one of the greatest writers of all time? Well, it wasn't an overnight thing. It was a journey, almost like an apprenticeship, where he studied the greatest writers of his time and just meticulously built his craft piece by piece. Scholars basically break his writing career down into these 3 big phases. You can think of them as steps on a ladder. First, he mastered the popular French style of the day. Then he climbed higher by absorbing the incredible innovations happening in the Italian Renaissance. And finally, he used all of that to reach the top and create something totally new, something uniquely English. So he kicks things off by writing in the French style, all about knights and courtly love, but then his diplomatic missions to Italy? Whoa, total game changer. He reads the giants, we're talking Dante, Petrarch, Boccaccio, and suddenly his writing gets this incredible psychological depth. But for his final act, his biggest influence was the world he knew best, the everyday life of 14th century England. And all of this, his life, his travels, his studies, it all leads to his masterpiece, the work that would change English literature forever, the Canterbury Tales. So, what are the Canterbury Tales all about? Well, the concept is so simple, it's brilliant. You get a whole bunch of people from every corner of society going on a pilgrimage, and to pass the time, they decide to have a storytelling contest. This simple idea gave Chaucer the perfect stage to create a huge, panoramic picture of his entire world. But what really made this thing a complete revolution in writing was the people in it. Chaucer gives us everyone. You've got the noble, perfect knight. Then you've got the drunken, rowdy miller. You have the absolutely unforgettable wife of Bath, who, by the way, had already buried 5 husbands. He shows us the truly good church figures and the seriously corrupt ones. It was life, you know, all of it in all its messy, wonderful detail. Okay, let's bring it all home. Why do we call him the architect? What exactly is the blueprint he created that pretty much everyone else has been following ever since? This, right here, is the big one, his most important legacy. See, before Chaucer, if you were writing anything serious in England, you wrote it in French or Latin. English was considered, the language of the common folk, a bit rough. Chaucer took the everyday language spoken on the streets of London and proved it could be just as beautiful, just as powerful, and just as complex as any other. He proved you could build a palace using the stone you find right in your own backyard. And by doing that, he literally built the foundation for everyone who came next. Think about it. Without Chaucer making it okay to write great art in English, do we get Shakespeare? Do we get Milton or Jane Austen or Charles Dickens? He created the very possibility for a tradition of great English literature. You see, in the end, you just can't separate the two parts of his life. The man and the architect were the same person. His career out in the real world gave him all the raw material, the people, the drama, the humor, and his literary genius gave him the tools to build something that would last forever. Which leaves us with this one kind of mind-blowing thought. If this one man, this soldier, this diplomat, this poet, hadn't done what he did, if he hadn't decided to write in the language of the London streets and markets, what would the English that we speak today even sound like? It's almost impossible to imagine.